Song of Songs, chapter 1, verses 1 through 8. I mentioned during our prayer time that my mentor sort of rocked my world recently during my one-on-ones. Milton Massey, who works for Crew Inner City, is my mentor, my father in the faith, and we get together for discipleship. And again, he rocked my world a few weeks ago, and I shared this during prayer, but I wanted to have it on the record because I think it's relevant for our study today. He challenged me with Mark chapter 7, verses 17 through 23. And in the passage, Jesus is teaching about what truly defiles and pollutes or soils a person. It's not Jesus' teaching. It's not from what's on the outside of a person that pollutes you, but it's what's on the inside. It's an inside job. I wasn't surprised because Jesus gives a list of the vices, of the sin, of the wickedness, of the iniquity, of the corruption that's inside of us that pollutes us and vitiates us and soils us before God. And as we were reading the list, I wasn't surprised about the list. That's until we got to the last vice that Jesus mentions in the text. I put these on the screen so you didn't have to search around for them. I want you to stay in the Song of Solomon or the Song of Songs, chapter 1. But let's look through this. I want to get to the end of this and share the last sin with you. Jesus, in Mark chapter 7, verse 17, it says, when Jesus went into the house after he had done teaching the crowds and the disciples, he went away from the crowd, and the disciples asked him about the parable. In verse 18, Jesus said to them, are you also as lacking in understanding? Don't you realize that nothing going into a person from the outside can defile him? For it doesn't go into his heart, but into his stomach and is eliminated. Thus he declared all foods clean. And he said, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of people's hearts come evil thoughts and sexual immoralities and thefts and murders, adulteries, greed, evil actions, deceit, self-indulgence, envy, slander, pride. And Jesus ends the vice list with foolishness. The other vices he mentions are just standard in vice lists or sin lists in both testaments. I was totally taken aback by the fact that Jesus says foolishness is one of those sort of evils. Look at verse 23, last verse. Jesus says all of these evil things come from within a person and pollutes them and defiles them and soils them before God. That disturbed my tranquility because I didn't see foolishness as being something inherently evil. I thought foolishness was something that's, tragic, unfortunate, something that we should avoid, but I never had it in the evil category. That shocked me. I'm a biblical theologian, but I think that just hit me right between the eyes. Why am I sharing Mark 7? Because this summer, we're going to be in the wisdom literature. We're going to be trekking through the Song of Solomon. The Song of Solomon, the Song of Songs, is in the wisdom sort of genre of the First Testament of the Hebrew Bible, right? So it's Psalms and Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and then the Song of Songs, and then Job is thrown in. There are 5 wisdom books in the Hebrew Bible, and this is one of those. And I think we're here today to sort of declare our repentance as we collectively repent of our foolish ignorance about God's divine design for romantic relationships. I think we've all made relationship mistakes because we haven't obeyed the wisdom that God has laid out for us. And God has given us a whole book in the Bible that is all about romantic relationships and lays out God's divine design for how those relationships are supposed to work. And the reason why we're divorced, and the reason why we've had our hearts broken with significant others and marriages and relationships that didn't succeed, is because we're sinners and we haven't committed ourselves to do romance and relationships God's way. So our summer sermon series is the Song of Songs and its romantic rapture revealed. And we're going to do this for the next 10 weeks throughout the summer before we kick into our fall season and we go back to our sermon series in the Gospel of Luke. And I can't wait to get back to Luke. But this is going to be a healthy sort of sidebar as we transition. Because all of us, there are two types of people in the church. And that sounds very simplistic, but the reality is two types of people. Either God's given you the gift of marriage or God's given you the gift of celibacy. There are two types of people. So either God's called you to be married or God has called you to be happily single so that you can do life and ministry and missions for the glory of God. There are two options and there isn't a third. And my experience is the overwhelming majority of God's people are called to marriage. There are a few people God calls to singleness, like the Apostle Paul, who could really just devote themselves without worrying about wife and kids and really just focus on ministry and missions to the ends of the earth. That is a luxury. I don't have that luxury anymore with my 3 kids, and I'm happy about that. But there is a place for singleness, and it is a gift and a special calling from God. For the overwhelming majority of us, this series is critically important. We're going to be hearing a lot this 10 weeks from one author, Tommy Nelson, who's kind of written the book that has taken our Christian culture by storm as he talks about the Song of Songs. And let me just give you an excerpt from Tommy Nelson's book on the Song of Songs. He says this, and I just found this really helpful, and I gave you this quote in the slides as a precursor to help us onboard into this series. Tommy Nelson says this. He says, in our culture, we too often become consumed with the heady emotion called romance. And very quickly after marriage, we find that the romance evaporates to reveal two very flawed persons in a difficult world. When we discover that the bright and happy romance has dissolved into the drudgery of daily living, and much to our dismay, we discover that our spouses have a shortage of character and virtue. We become discouraged and deeply frustrated, and we too often become divorced before the ink on our marriage license is dry. We are a nation of people quick to fall into romance and then later quick to bail out on commitment. I think he's spot on about what's happened in American culture. So we need, our culture has shown doing relationships and pursuing romance and sexual intimacy and connection with the opposite sex. Our culture has proven we don't know how to do that very well. Our divorce rate says we don't know how to do that very well. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and what? Expecting a different result. That makes you out of your mind. So either we can follow Hollywood and read all the self-help books that are in Barnes and Nobles and in the bookstores, or we can actually go to Scripture and say, what does God have to say about romantic relationships, and what does God have to say about attraction and dating and courtship and marriage and conflict resolution and sexual intimacy? How does a man make love to a woman? It's in the Song of Songs. How does a woman make love to a man? It's in the Song of Songs. How do you resolve your conflict? It's in the Song of Songs. And so this summer we're going to be unpacking each one of these subject matters every week so that we can become wise. Because why? Foolishness is an evil. And after this summer, we won't be able to say that we are ignorant and unlearned of God's divine design for romantic relationships. So that's a little bit of an intro. Let me just set this passage up. We're going to do two things today. Really simple, two movements in the text. One is authorship. Every time you start a new sermon series, we have to understand who the author is, what he's doing in the text, and then we feel confident once we understand what's happening in the text to jump into the passage. So we're going to do authorship in verse 1. Then we'll look at attraction, which is our first topic that we're going to cover this summer. What does physical attraction, romantic attraction look like, and what are some lessons we can learn from the story? But first, the author. It's rude to read people's letters and not understand the person who wrote them. So let me just introduce some of you to who we believe the author of this text is, which is Solomon. I believe that Solomon, I want to introduce him to you as the superb sage. And there are really three things that I want to show you about Solomon. I want to show you that he's the royal son of David. Then I want to show you his robust catalog of wisdom. And then we'll look at how renowned Solomon was, how famous he was because of his wisdom. So he's royal. His catalog of wisdom literature is robust. And then he was renowned. So those are the three R's that I'll show you. And I'm going to just read from 1 Kings to highlight why Solomon is somebody we should be listening to and why his words matter. So the first reason why Solomon is somebody who's an authoritative figure and somebody we should trust and that we should listen to is that he's David's son. He's the royal son of David. Here's David's coronation of his son as David hands the kingdom to his beloved son Solomon. Solomon was not David's first son. He was the son of his evil interaction with Bathsheba. The first child from that union, you guys know the story, died as a result of David's murder of killing Bathsheba's husband. But the second son born to this couple was this amazing son, Solomon. And here's David handing him the kingdom. It says, King David responded by saying, call my wife Bathsheba for me. So she came into the king's presence and stood before him. And the king swore an oath and said, as Yahweh lives, who has redeemed my life from every difficulty, just as I swore to you by Yahweh, the God of Israel, your son, our son Solomon, is to become king after me, and he is the one who is to sit on my throne in my place. That is exactly what I will do this very day. Bathsheba knelt low with her face to the ground, paying homage to her husband David the king, and said, may my lord King David live forever. King David then called in the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, before me, David says. He said, bring them before me. So they came into the king's presence, and the king said to them, take my servants with you, have my son Solomon ride on my mule, and take him down to Gihon. There, the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan, you are to anoint him as king over Israel. You are to blow the trumpet and say, long live King Solomon. You are to come up after him, and he is to come in and sit on my throne. He is the one who is to become king in my place. He is the one I have commanded to be ruler over Israel and Judah. So Solomon is the one who inherits the kingdom of the great King David. So Solomon has credibility because David gives him the throne of their fathers. Now, Solomon's robust catalog, here's what's relevant to this particular story. Look at the wisdom that God gave Solomon. He's this superb sage. He's a wise man. And look at the account of this in 1 Kings chapter 4. Just these 5 verses. It says that God gave Solomon wisdom, very great insight and understanding, as vast as the sand of the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than all the wisdom of all the people of the East, greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. And Solomon was wiser than anyone, wiser than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman and Calcol and Darda, the sons of Mahal. His reputation extended to all the surrounding nations. And look at his catalog in verse 32. Solomon spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. That, my friends, is a rich, robust catalog. Look at the last verse in verse 33 says that Solomon spoke about trees and from the cedars of Lebanon to the hyssop growing out of the wall. He also spoke about animals and birds and reptiles and fish. There was no human being before Solomon or after him that was more wise, more understanding, more prudent, more knowledgeable than Solomon, except Jesus. Right? So Jesus is the most wise human being that's ever lived, and after Jesus is Solomon. So we can trust Solomon because he's a royal son of David, but he's also the wisest man that ever lived. And he wrote these proverbs and he wrote these songs. And one of his songs, we're going to spend this summer studying. He also wrote Psalm 72. And he wrote Psalm 127. Psalm 127 is one of my favorites, but he was also a psalm writer, and 2 of those psalms out of the 1,005 are Psalm 72 and Psalm 127, and you can read those later. So he's the royal son of David. He is got this rich and robust catalog of wisdom literature, but he was also renowned and famous for his wisdom. Look at this. This is brilliant. The last verse in 1 Kings 4, and then we'll skip over to chapter 10, and all these verses are coming up on the screen. I wanted to make it easy for you. How famous was Solomon? That's the question you're asking. If we're going to study him, was he famous for his wisdom? Absolutely. Look at verse 34. It says, emissaries, dignitaries, ambassadors of all the people sent by every king on earth who had heard of Solomon's wisdom, they came to listen to Solomon's wisdom. Over at 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 1 through 7, he got a special guest. The Queen of Sheba heard about Solomon's fame and connected his fame that was connected with the name of Yahweh, and she came to test him with difficult questions. She came to Jerusalem with a large entourage with camels bearing spices, gold and great abundance, and precious stones. She came to Solomon and spoke to him about everything that was on her mind. So Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too difficult for the king to explain to her. And when the Queen of Sheba observed all of Solomon's wisdom, the palace he built, the food at his table, his servants' residence, his attendants' service and their attire, his cupbearers and the burnt offerings he offered in Yahweh's temple that he built, it took her breath away. Look at verse 6. I love this. She said to the king, the report I heard in my own country about your words and about your wisdom is true. Then she ends by saying, but I didn't believe the reports until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, I was not even told the half. Your wisdom and prosperity far exceed the report I heard. Solomon was the royal son of David. He was this author of this rich, robust catalog of wisdom literature, but he was also renowned and famous that every kingdom in the known world heard about Solomon's wisdom, his prosperity, and they sent dignitaries and ambassadors to come check this out for themselves. So if the whole known world came to learn from Solomon, guess what we should do? Learn from Solomon. And that's exactly what we're going to do. All of that was introduction. Song of Songs, verse 1. Here's the authorship. And all of these verses will come up on the screen. Verse 1 of the Song of Songs gives us this description of who the author is. It says, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. The text says that this song that is written belongs to Solomon, and it is the Song of Songs. Now, if Solomon has written 1,005 songs, this song declares that what we're going to study is the song of all songs. It is the best of the best. This is a superlative saying that out of all the songs that Solomon wrote, this is the best of the best. This is kind of like in the tabernacle, in the temple. This is the Holy of Holies. Because in the temple, there's the holy place, and then there's the most holy place. God is called the King of Kings. There are earthly kings, but God is the King of all the kings. That He is the Lord of lords. There are a lot of lords and a lot of masters and a lot of sovereign people, but God is the Lord of all the lords. And this song is the best of the best of the best of the best of all of the songs that Solomon wrote. And so if this is the best that he wrote, then guys, we ought to enjoy this story. So the first topic we're going to deal with is attraction. Here's why in our journey to romance, the first thing that happens is that we're attracted to somebody. The National Institute on Health, I was reading an article, was saying that attraction usually happens with kids around the age 10. It happens automatically. It happens without effort. And so we need to be talking to our kids as early as 8, 9, 10, 11 years old about attraction. I hear Bear and her friends talking about crushes and about boys, and I hear the conversations. We need to start having earlier conversations with our kids and our grandkids and our nieces and nephews, because already from the age of 10, kids are trying to figure out their crushes and who they like and who do you like and does he like you and did you ask him or will you ask him for me? I've heard all of the conversations. Again, I got 3 girls at home. And in this story, the story begins with attraction. And here's the question we want to ask about attraction. It's, what are you attracted to? All of us have an idea of a man or a woman that we are attracted to. And I want to affirm that God created us to be attracted to the opposite sex, and that's totally okay. What I want to declare to you today is what we're going to learn from Solomon is that our attraction has to be two-dimensional. What we're going to see in the text is that there's, first of all, an external sort of physical dimension of attraction. We're going to see that in verses 2 and just the A part of verse 3. There are 3 things that Solomon's love interest is attracted to about Solomon. I should probably say this from the outset. Don't be surprised. The majority of the conversation comes from this woman about her interest and infatuation and love and desire for Solomon. And Solomon will talk as well, but the majority of this song is the woman speaking. Guys, don't miss that. Our women talk circles around us. And the reason why women talk circles around us is because they think circles around us. Yeah. Physiologically, women have more bridges between the 2 hemispheres of their brains than men do. That's why women think faster than men do, and they talk faster than we do. Because God wired a woman's brain to be a little bit more efficient than men's brains. And that's just a neurological fact. That's why my wife outthinks me all the time, because her brain is wired to do so. So this woman's going to talk a lot, and she says some amazing things, and we're going to learn some really important insights. So our attraction has to be two-dimensional. And the problem is, most of us only focus on the external physical stuff, and we pay no mind or no credence to the second dimension, which we'll get into in the second half. Now, quickly, look at what she says, beginning in verse 2. In verse 2, she's attracted to two things about Solomon. The first one is she says, oh, that Solomon would kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. It's something about Solomon's mouth that attracted her. And all she could think about is, man, I long for the day when that mouth is going to be all over me. See, that's the reason why this subject matter is not for kids, because we're going to be talking about sexual intimacy and erotic things all summer, and most churches don't touch this with a 10-foot pole. From the very beginning, she's dreaming about his mouth on her. Solomon must have been a stud. David was a 10. David would have been the sexiest man alive if he lived today. And to think that Solomon was just as handsome and just as much of a stud as his dad, that's not hard to believe. So she wants his mouth on her. Not a bad thing, right? So she's infatuated and drawn and attracted to his mouth. Not sure what that is. We'll get to heaven. When you guys meet Solomon for the first time, guess what? The first thing you're going to do? You're going to look at his mouth. You know, what is it about his lips? Was it his teeth? What was it that was the first mention of her attraction? Then in verse 2, she says, your love, other translations, but it's plural. So your loving caresses are more delightful than wine. She's convinced that if she ever wins Solomon's heart, and she is ever his bride, that when they are making love and he's got his hands all over her body as he's caressing her and fondling her, she said that's going to be better than wine itself. Are you guys trekking with me? This may be hard to hear. Most churches pastors won't talk about this, but this is Bible. And she's attracted to and fantasizing about the possibility of being his wife and having his hands fondle her and caress her and while they make love. Dreaming about it. Then in just the A part of verse 3, she says, the fragrance of your perfume is intoxicating. That's the third one. You know, due to water scarcity, men in the ancient Near East didn't bathe regularly. So in order to mask body odor, they lather themselves in oils and ointments and colognes. And she's had enough proximity to Solomon that she smelled him. And she said, man, the scents that I smell from you I get drunk just smelling you. I'm just intoxicated. Like I'm losing my mind. I'm out of my senses by the oils and the fragrance, the cologne that I smell whenever I'm near you. Not sure how this woman had access to the king, but she does, and she is just taken aback by his smell. Guys, we need to smell good. Women like guys that smell good. And so his fragrance is intoxicating. She says it's more delightful than wine. Wine in the ancient world was a privilege. It was a gift. It was a blessing of life to have wine because the water sources weren't always drinkable. So to have access to wine was truly sort of a gift in the ancient world. And it kind of is in our day as well. So look, I've given you a summary on this slide. What are the three external, physical dimensions that she is attracted to? It's his mouth, his loving caresses, it is his scent. Guys, it's normal and natural for us to be physically attracted to someone. It happens automatically. It happens without conscious effort. God has wired us to be attracted to some man or to some woman. We don't need to hide that or avoid that. You can't control it. You're attracted to who you're attracted to. But there is an aspect of attraction that you can control. and that you do need to do something about it. That is the second dimension of attraction, which is the internal sort of character dimension that we're going to see in verses 3b through verse 8. And I want you to notice that the majority of the material in the attraction is devoted to the internal stuff, not the external stuff. See, the character stuff is going to keep you engaged in lifelong love forever. The external stuff, somebody's mouth and their abs and the size of their chest or their derriere or their hips or whatever, all of the external stuff that attracts us and that we love to see, that stuff fades over time. It's the internal stuff. Jesus said it's not only what's on the outside that defiles you, but it's what's on the inside. The same thing is true with regard to romantic relationships. It's not how good she looks. It's what is her character like on the inside. It's not how good he smells or how good he smiles or how strong he walks or talks, but it's what is his Christ-like character on the inside. And that's where the majority of the material is. And this is not the area where we spend a lot of time or where we vest a lot of our resources. But I want you to notice God's divine design is that 5 of these verses are about the internal stuff and only 1.5 are about the external. We should take a clue from that. So look at what she says. What is the first dimension or dynamic that she's attracted to about Solomon? We're going to see 2 things. We're going to see integrity and virtue and reputation about both Solomon and the woman. And there are 5 of them. So the first one she mentions in the B part of verse 3 is she says to Solomon, as if she's talking to him, she says, Solomon, your name is perfume poured out. That's the first one. His name. One author said this. He says, Solomon's reputation goes before him positively like his scent. What does she mean by your name? Names in the ancient Near East were believed to be indicative of a person's nature, character, and or their future. Remember that when Adam names his wife, he calls her Eve. Why does Adam name his wife Eve? Because the text says that she is the mother of all the living. And Eve means life or living. Her name says something about her role in human history. Remember when God changes Abraham's name from Avram to Abraham. Avram means exalted father, and Abraham means father of the nations. Why? Because God said he's going to make Abraham the father of many nations, more numerous than the sand of the seashore, the dust of the earth, and the stars of the sky. The name change was significant. Remember when the Lord changed Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel or Yisrael. Yaakov or Jacob means heel grabber, right? Because remember, he was grabbing Esau's heel at birth. They were twin brothers, and Yaakov or Jacob was grabbing Esau's heel at birth. So Jacob means heel grabber, but his name was changed to Yisrael or Israel, he who strives or fights with God. Why? Because he wrestled the angel of the Lord all night and succeeded. When Mary and Joseph were instructed by Gabriel to name their son Yeshua or Yahshua. Why? Because Yeshua means Yahweh is salvation. And Gabriel said, name him Yeshua because he's going to save his people from their sins. Names mean something in the biblical world. Now, Solomon's name is from the Hebrew root of shalom. And so Solomon's name in the Hebrew means peaceable or peaceful, but she's not interested in the etymology of his name. Maybe he was peaceful or peaceable, but she's referring to his character, to his integrity, his reputation. She says, Solomon, your name, your integrity, your character, your reputation is like perfume poured out. So she calls that out. She says, in the court of public opinion, your name smells better than the body oils that intoxicate me. Family, a person's character, integrity, and commitment to Christ is where the true essence of our attraction must ultimately be tested. If somebody we're attracted to is not walking with God, they've got no business walking with us. Why am I saying that? Because look at what Paul says. I've given you these verses. They're going to show up on the screen. 2 Corinthians, you guys have probably heard these before in verses 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 through 18. Paul says, do not be yoked together with those who do not believe. For what partnership is there between righteousness and lawlessness? Or what fellowship does light have with darkness? And what agreement does Christ have with Belial? Belial is another word for Lucifer or for Satan. In the Old Testament, Belial stands for wickedness or worthlessness, but by the time of Paul, it became the name became synonymous with evil personified. And evil personified is Satan himself. So Paul says, what agreement does Christ have with evil personified? These are all rhetorical questions. The answer to all of these is nothing. Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? Nothing. And what agreement does a temple of God have with idols? Nothing. For we are the temple of the living God. As God said, I will dwell and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from among the unbelievers. Come out from among them. And what does Paul command us? To be separate. Says the Lord. God's word through Paul is to come out from among unbelievers and to be separate, God says. Do not touch the unclean thing. And God says, and I will welcome you. And I will be a father to you, and you will be sons and daughters to me, says the Lord Almighty. So someone's name must be rooted in their relationship with God. Now, let me offer some truth serum, because those of you that know my story, and Stacy and I's story, I began dating her when she was an unbeliever. I knew better. No one held me accountable for my behavior. People who could have called me out looked the other way. I'm not blaming anyone but myself. In retrospect, I wish I wasn't left to my own narcissism and immaturity. But let me admonish you, and it would be a grave mistake to think, oh, well, everything worked out for Pastor Darrell and Stacy, therefore everything will work out for me as well. It's unthinkably unchristian to intentionally commit the sins of others, expecting to receive the same grace and forgiveness as the sinner whom we are patterning ourselves after. Don't ever do that. No one held me accountable. I did the exact opposite of what Paul just said. I was a Christian, and I started dating a coworker who wasn't a believer, and all I was attracted to was the external stuff. Nobody challenged me and said, hey, does she know God? Is she walking with God? If she's not walking with God, why are you walking with her? No one challenged me. Not my pastor, not my family, not my parents, not my peers, no one. I needed to be held accountable. I needed for somebody to call me to a higher standard, because I was 21, 22, young, dumb, and sexually on fire, and no one held me accountable. And I almost threw my life away and almost wrecked God's plans and purposes for Stacy and I, because I was trying to get what I wanted and ask God to sign off on it. It was a tragedy, and I regret it to this very day. we learn something very important in Genesis. What do we learn? That when God has a dream and a destiny for your life, even with diversions and distractions and depravity, you can't screw it up. God had already written in his book that Stacy and I were supposed to be together, but I almost screwed it up trying to do it my way, as opposed to doing it the way the Song of Solomon says to do it. So I'm telling you, do as I say, but not as I do. Don't do what I did. It may not work out for you the way it worked out for me. God doesn't owe you the same grace he gave me. Don't do it. Take it from me. Don't do it. Hold off. Make sure that somebody is a believer and that they're walking with God. Now, when Stacy did come to faith, I wanted to ask her to marry me like the day she came to faith. But I showed some resistance. We went through Jews for Jesus, through their discipleship program. I waited a year and a half through intense biweekly discipleship with Jews for Jesus and Tuvia Zaretsky, who was the mentor and the man who led Stacy to faith. I wanted to make sure she was truly a believer before I got down on one knee. So while I didn't wait on the front end, I waited on the back end, and I'm so glad that I waited. So I'm telling you, not because I did everything right, it's because I did it so wrong. And what I want for you guys is something so much better than Stacy and I will ever experience in our life, because we did it the wrong way. Most pastors won't tell you that they've done it all wrong, because they're wondering whether you'll look at them differently. I don't care. What I want for you is better than what I'll ever experience in this life. So I have to challenge you to call you up and out to a higher standard. Say, look at me as what not to do, not what to do. You tracking with me? So I'm bearing my soul in this series. Then she says in verse 3, go back to verse 3 again, because the second virtue in verse 3 is one that I don't think we value enough. And that's where she says, no wonder the young women adore you. You see that in the B part, the C part of verse 3? No wonder the young women adore you. The young woman acknowledges that the other young maidens, the other unmarried young women view Solomon the way she does. Can I help somebody today? If you're the only one who sees what you see in someone, then I wouldn't put too much trust in what you see. This woman thinks that Solomon is a worthy catch. And sometimes we can be attracted to somebody and other people are like, I don't see what she see in him. And nobody sees it but you. And if you're the only one who sees what you see in that person, there's probably something wrong with your attraction. I'm helping somebody today. Because the other young maidens, they see all the virtue in him that she sees. Get confirmation. Get confirmation from your inner circle and from people who know you, who can give you perspective about whether your attraction is legitimate or not. Because sometimes we can be into something that ain't, as my grandmother would say from Arkansas, that ain't what the owl left on the limb. And you know what owls leave on the limb? It's feces. And some of us are all enamored by the feces. Because we hadn't asked anybody for a perspective. We hadn't asked people who know God, know us, and know them. Hey, is this somebody I should be attracted to? Is there some substance here, or am I just all enamored and focused and attracted to the physical? Is there some substance here? You got to ask people. And in America, we think, well, as long as I like it, I don't care what anybody thinks. Good luck with that. Let me know how that goes in 20 years. Notice the woman values that, other people see what I see. It's not just me. So the second virtue is inner circle confirmation. We need that. And if your inner circle is not confirming or affirming what you see in the other person, I would pause. God's got some good stuff in this book that's going to help us. Now, verse 4 is a little bit of an interlude. There are no virtues here, but really something is important happening in this passage. But look at this really cool interlude here. It says, the woman says, take me with you. She's fantasizing about being with Solomon. And she says to him, Solomon, take me with you. Let's hurry. She says, oh, that the king would bring me into his chambers. What do you think happens in a man? Now, in the ancient world, men and women slept in different rooms. And she is saying, oh, that Solomon would bring me into his chambers. I want to go to bed with him. She's dreaming about this. Take me quickly. I love that she is attracted to him. She knows that there's some substance and there's this daydreaming about spending the night in his chambers. The B part says, now the young women chime in this interlude. Songs have interludes. We just did some in our praise and worship. This is an interlude, and the woman speaks, and now the other young maidens chime in. They say, we will rejoice and be glad in you, and we will celebrate your caresses more than wine. They hear her fantasies, and they're like, yeah, we're all in with that. That would be wonderful. Solomon, whoever you choose among us women of meritable age, whoever you choose, we're going to celebrate your loving caresses when you hold us and during lovemaking, and you fondle us and caress us. Whoever you choose, we're gonna love that more than we love wine. Now the woman comes back in, and look at what she says. It's only right that they adore you. Solomon, you're worthy of that. I love you. They love you. Now you got a choice to make. Who are you going to pick to be your wife? But I'm attracted to you. They're attracted to you, and you're worthy of our attraction. And we all agree about that. I love that beautiful interlude as these girls are in love and infatuated with this king. Now, here's virtue number 3. And this is the woman's character coming to the forefront. Notice in verse 5, she says, daughters of Jerusalem. She's speaking to her friends, these other young maidens. She says, I am dark like the tents of Kedar, yet lovely like Solomon's curtains. The third virtue that from this text is godly confidence. And you should write that in your notes. She says, I'm dark but lovely. Kedar refers to an ancient Arabian tribe of Bedouin shepherds who lived in tents and inhabited a region in northern Arabia. Their tents were traditionally woven from the wool of black goats. They were not beautiful to look at. Their tents were rough and rustic and rugged and weather-beaten. And she says, my skin is like that. She's self-conscious about her skin and about her complexion. In the ancient world, fairer skinned girls, lighter skinned girls were more valued in the ancient world. And here she shows some confidence. She says, hey, I'm darker than what is socially acceptable, but I'm still lovely. And she says she's lovely like the curtains of Solomon. Solomon's royalty. And so his curtains would have been made out of the best material, would have probably been purple or dark purple. And she says her skin has been tarnished. And so she's darker than usual, but she says, I'm dark but lovely. Dark skin was looked down upon in Solomon's day, and so she's telling the other women, don't look at my dark skin. Light skin was valued for two reasons. First of all, classism. Again, fair skin signified nobility, dignity, and upper class. It also signified conservation. If a young woman was valued and treasured and cherished by her family, then they would keep her at home away from dangers and strangers and temptation and social scrutiny. So if you were a guy in Solomon's world, you wanted a fair-skinned girl, because that means her parents kept her away and focused on house duties and not out and about where she could be taken advantage of and doing manual labor, and her hands are rough and her skin is dark, and you didn't want a dark-skinned woman in Solomon's day. Again, this woman's complexion is the exact opposite of what is socially desired, but yet she's confident and secure and positive about who she is. And as a husband and a girl dad, I don't think it can be overstated that we're better served when we live in a world where women and girls are intrinsically feel good about themselves, no matter what societies and cultures say about them. So she demonstrates a godly confidence. Hey, I'm not what's socially accepted, but I'm still lovely. I'm still acceptable. And I want to just encourage our women to say, hey, fill in the blank. Hey, I am what but lovely. What is that for you? What for our women? What insecurities? What are you subconscious about that makes you think that somebody can't be attracted to you, that you're not lovely, that you're not desirable, that a man can't be crazy about you? Fill in the blank. Hey, I am what, but I want you to also end that with, but yet I'm lovely. Because you can't expect to attract the man that you want God to send you if you are not confident that you're lovely and that you're worthy. This woman, this young maiden says, hey, I'm not the ideal, but I'm still lovely. And if you struggle today, I hope you find some courage and some confidence in this woman. Why is her skin tan? Look, she explains in verse 6, which leads to the fourth virtue. She says, do not stare at me because I'm dark. The sun has gazed on me. My mother's sons were angry with me, and they made me take care of the vineyards. I have not taken care of my own vineyard. The fourth virtue is submission to authority. We learn the backstory of why the young woman is tanned the way she is. Her mother's sons, not her brothers. Notice how she identifies them. Not my brothers, but my mother's sons were angry at her and forced her to work in the vineyard. This is oftentimes male work or work relegated to slaves, but there was some tension between this young woman and her brothers, and they forced her to work in the vineyard. Her character is on display here because she submits to her brother's authority, who with no father mentioned in the song would have assumed the responsibility for overseeing the affairs of the home. So she submits to her brother's authority. She doesn't rebel. She doesn't go against that. She works in the vineyard because that's where her brothers have assigned her. And notice that she says, I took care of the vineyard, but my own vineyard I have not taken care of. The vineyard she's talking about is her complexion, her appearance, her own body. I've done that, but I haven't been able to take care of myself. Don't look at me. I'm dark, but I'm still lovely. Really, really good. I love this. I gave you this quote from Tommy Nelson. He says, if you're physically attracted to someone who is rebellious against his or her parents, or who refuses to submit to or respect parents as well as other authority figures, rethink your attraction. A person who refuses to obey human authority figures is going to rebel against the authority of God. This woman is virtuous because she submits to the authority of her brothers, even though it works against her own appearance and her own complexion and her own body. That's a woman of character. Now I want you to notice something. In tending to the family's garden, again, her own vineyard, her body, her appearance, her complexion, she had not maintained. There's something paradoxical in this young woman. In the previous verse, she displayed confidence. I'm dark but lovely. And now here she shows a slight bit of self-consciousness. And that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes our confidence can waver and we can vacillate between confidence and self-consciousness. That's okay. We're flawed people. The fifth virtue is in verse 7, and this is the last one. She says, as she turns to Solomon, in verse 7, she says, tell me, Solomon, the man that I'm attracted to, whom I love, where will you pasture your sheep today? Where will you let them rest at noon? And then she says this, and here's, we need to camp out here. Why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? The fifth virtue is a commitment to virtue or vigilance. Her veil reference has three possible meanings, one of which I think is untenable. The first reference to why should I wear a veil? Why should she veil herself beside the flocks of your companions? This could be a reference to being a prostitute. Some prostitutes in the ancient worlds veiled themselves. She's like, Solomon, let's have a noontime rendezvous. I want to meet up. Where are you going to be shepherding your sheep? Let's get together for a romantic rendezvous. And she says, but Solomon, I don't want to have to veil myself. Remember when Tamar tricked Judah into sleeping with him? Genesis 38, my Genesis students, she veiled herself. And as Judah was passing by, he thought she was a prostitute, not knowing that it was his daughter-in-law. And he takes her in and impregnates her. And you guys know the story. So this reference could be saying, hey, I don't want to have to veil myself. It's going to look like if I go out to the field where the shepherds are all tending to their flocks, it's going to look like I'm a prostitute soliciting business. I don't want to do that. Can you tell me exactly the coordinates give me the address of where you're going to be so that people don't think I'm a prostitute? So that's one reference. The other reference is that if you amend the text, she could be referencing to wandering, looking for Solomon, and she doesn't want to be perceived as a wanderer amongst the men who are tending to their flocks. And so she's like, that wouldn't be a good look. I could be taken advantage of if I got lost, and they're only male shepherds, and I'm a young maiden out among. I don't want to be wandering and lost looking for you. Can you just tell me where you're going to be? So she's saying, this is dangerous for me. This will put me in a precarious position. I don't want to do that. So if we're going to have this romantic rendezvous, can you tell me exactly where you're going to be? Now the third option is she's talking about picking lice out of her skin, because hanging out with sheep and goats, they're notorious for having lice. And another interpretation is she's like, tell me where you're going to be. I don't want to have to pick lice out of my hair and out of my skin. I don't think the third option is what's going on in the text. So it's either one or two. Either she's saying, I don't want to veil myself to be perceived as a prostitute, or I don't want to be out, wandering around aimlessly. That would be dangerous and put me in a precarious position. So Solomon, tell me where you're going to be. So either she's committed to her abstinence and not being perceived as a prostitute, or she's committed to vigilance and not putting herself in harm's way. Either one of those is acceptable translations. I'm not sure which one of those things is happening in the text, but there is, whether it's virtue or vigilance, she's to be commended because she's young, but she's got a good head on her shoulders, and she's protecting herself either way, and that is worthy to be commended. So here's the slide of the 5 internal character and integrity dimensions that are highlighted in these verses. Solomon's name, the inner circle confirmation from the other maidens, her godly confidence, her submission to authority, and then her commitment to virtue or to vigilance. Guys, this is the stuff that we should really be attracted to. This is the stuff that matters more than all of the physical stuff. Now, this paragraph ends. Now we finally get a chance to hear from Solomon. She's offered to have this romantic rendezvous at noontime for a secret meetup. And how does Solomon respond to her? This is beautiful. Solomon says, and this is a playful tease on Solomon's part. He doesn't give her the address. He doesn't give her the coordinates. Look, he kind of teases her in verse 8. He says, oh, if you don't know, most beautiful of women, follow the tracks of the flock and pasture your goats near the shepherd's tents. Does that sound like an address to you? It does not. Now look at the first thing he says. He says, if you don't know, most beautiful among women. Now, this is music to her ears. Because what is she self-conscious about? Whether she's too dark for Solomon to be attracted to her. And what does he call her? The most beautiful of women. I'm sure this must have been music to her ears. Solomon says, of all the women in Israel, you're the most beautiful. This is the Song of Songs. And he says, you are the most beautiful of all the beautiful women. That is just amazing that he speaks into her insecurity. Notice that. He's aware that she says, I'm dark but lovely. He says, honey, you don't need to worry about it. You are the most beautiful of all the women. See, when you are attracted to somebody of substance, they will be aware of your vulnerabilities, of your insecurities, and they will speak into and cause you to be confident in areas where you are self-conscious. Guys, I'm talking today. But if you have vulnerabilities, if you have insecurities, and the person you're attracted to doesn't lift you up, doesn't exalt you, doesn't speak to those things and persuade you to rethink those, then you're attracted to the wrong person. Solomon, first thing he does is speak to her insecurities. That's what men do. I've done that for my wife for 28 years. Because real men do that. And then he gives her this playful tease, and he says, hey, I'm going out to pasture the flock. Follow the tracks of my flock. What? How do I do that? If you want to know where I am, just follow the tracks in the dirt. You'll find me. That's nuts. Then he tells her, hey, look, let's play this off. We don't want anybody to know that we're planning this romantic rendezvous. So why don't you bring your goats? I'm going to be with my sheep, and it'll look like we're just tending to our flocks. I got my sheep, you have your goats, and it'll look like we're just taking care of business, but we're really there to have this romantic rendezvous. So now they got a plan to make sure that other people aren't in their business. Isn't that cute? When I was at the store with Stacy, we both worked at Bed Bath & Beyond. I thought she was cute. And she was a personal shopper, and she was all around the store. But when I wanted her in my department, I used to make up a reason to have to call her to my department so I could see her. So I pretended like I didn't know something. Like if there was a customer asking me about a coffee maker, I pretended like I didn't know the answer. So I got on the loudspeaker and said, Stacy, the housewares. And Stacy would come to housewares and say, hey, can you help this customer? They're asking questions about coffee. I could answer the questions. I wanted to look at her. Solomon has said, hey, you bring your goats, I'll bring my sheep, and everybody will think we're working, but we're really here to meet up. You get what's going on in verse 8? I did that. That's why I laughed when I got to verse 8, because I did that as well. Don't miss the fact that this rendezvous is potentially happening in the public place where the other shepherds will be. I'll reiterate this again next week when we address the topic of dating, but in order to keep the enemy at bay and minimize temptation, meetups should only happen in well-populated public places, no quiet parking lots, no quiet parks, no carless parking lots, no empty movie theaters or trafficless residential streets. Notice they're having their rendezvous in the public where other people are going to be. That's how you keep temptation and the enemy at bay. See, we get into trouble and we start going too far when we're in the car all by ourselves and nobody's around. When we're at that quiet park and nobody is there, bad things happen. When we go to the movie theater that nobody wants to see and we buy tickets because we know we're going to be alone in the movie theater, bad things happen. You guys trekking with me? The wisdom here is they're meeting up in a public place. You don't have to worry about any temptation. They're out there with a whole bunch of shepherds and a whole lot of sheep and a whole lot of goats. What's going to happen out there? Nothing. So the wisdom is that if I'm getting together in isolation and in a private place, bad things can happen. Take the wisdom from Solomon, meet up in public places. Nobody told me that. Now here is the Coram Deo. I promise you the rest of the messages won't be this long. This week we had to do the setup for the passage. Moving forward, the other 9 weeks, we're just going to jump right into the passage. The first weeks of a sermon series are always longer. This is not indicative of how long we'll go moving forward. Here are the Coram Deos. Every week we ask the question, how do I live this out in the presence and before the face of God? Coram Deo is a Latin term. Coram means in the presence or before the face, and Deo or day is how we say God in Latin. So here's what we think about every Sunday. The first big takeaway is God's divine design is that we're attracted more to the internal character dimension than we are to the external physical dimension. That's clear from the passage. The majority of the material is about the internal character and less about the external physical stuff. And that's where our energy and effort needs to be spent as we sort through and navigate attraction. Number 2, seek a 360-degree perspective on the person you're attracted to by the people who know you best and see the other person for who they really are. Don't think that you're a know-it-all and that you can figure this out on your own. The woman doesn't in the Song of Songs, and neither should you, and neither should I have. Number 3, if someone we're attracted to isn't walking with God, they've got no business walking with us. That's clear from Paul, and we're going to talk about more of that on next week when we get into the topic of dating. Let's pray, and then we'll get into our Q&A time. God, thank you for this word today. So many great insights from just the first 8 verses of the Song of Songs. Use this as we navigate romantic relationships for the rest of our lives. Help us to understand attraction is two-dimensional, it's physical, and it's character and integrity. It's about somebody's name and their walk with you. So help us to prioritize what matters most to you, and that's the internal stuff. Jesus, you said it's what comes out of us that is most important, not what's on the outside of us. So help us to apply this to our lives, again, so that we can be hearers of your word and not doers only. If we are, we're deceiving ourselves. We ask your blessings now in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen.